Between 1938 to 1954, an average of 40,000 people were killed in accidents, aside from the 1,500,000 injuries out of 5 million reported accidents annually. And ever since then, the numbers began to rise. Taking notice of that, Ralph Nader, a muckraker, wrote and worked and spoke about it in a magazine in 1959. Labeling the published work, "The Safe Car You Can't Buy," for it directly expresses the issue of the lack of automobile safety at the time. During that time period, society blamed the injuries and deaths on the driver rather than the car itself. That myth was also known as the nut behind the wheel. Only a few years later, up until 1965, Ralph Nader wrote and published Unsafe at Any Speed, The Design and Dangers of the American Automobile. The book itself expressed how vehicles during that time were built for speed and style rather than safety, ignoring the entire concept of it. The book also addresses how some style design factors are unsafe in crashes. Take the sharp edges on dashboards, for example, as well as addressing the lack of safety implements in vehicles, such as padded dashboards, reinforced steering columns, seatbelts, and airbags. The book received much attention across the United States, and Nader's name was known in automobile safety. Ralph Nader was born on February 2, 1934, in Winsted, Connecticut, under Lebanese immigrants. He received education and graduated from the Gilbert School in 1951, and also graduated from the Princeton University in 1955. He later went on to Harvard Law School, and soon after became a lawyer in Connecticut after serving in the United States Army in 1959. From 1961 to 1963, he became an assistant professor at the Harvard University and remained one for 2 years. In 1964, Ralph Nader moved to Washington, D.C., where he is appointed as a political advisor to the Assistant Secretary of Labor at the time. He also was an advisor to the United States Senate Subcommittee, advising them on car safety. Ralph Nader and Unsafe at Any Speed gained their popularity as well as their notoriety in the first chapter of the book, called The Sporty Corvair, dubbing it the one-car accident. This chapter heavily criticized and attacked the Chevrolet Corvair, GM's popular sports sedan, that had its highest sales rate prior to the publication of the book. Since the vehicle was a really popular one among the US, the book was very influential in that prospect. The Corvair lacked seatbelts and had many different design flaws that Nader pointed out in the book that could kill somebody in an accident. Nader explained the faults of the Corvair, especially on its swing axle system.
Basically, swing axle suspension system, the wheel is basically following the imperfections of the road without upsetting the vehicle itself. Okay, so you would like to have a light moving part of the suspension, called the unsprung weight, heavy car. The swing arm suspension basically was an independent rear suspension. Each wheel could move on its own. To locate the wheel fore and aft, to keep it from going back and forth, there's an arm coming back okay, then the axle itself is the other part of the suspension. Okay, so the wheel is doing this, you have a transmission in the center of the car, and a U-joint right here, so the axle is doing this. Okay, it's light, it's simple. For low power cars, it's great. But when you are in corners, and if your swing arm suspension has the wheels canted downward, which is fairly normal, okay, so the axles are coming down slightly, the cornering force on the car tends to push the wheel under the car and lift the rear of the car. Okay, so the back end of the car comes up in heavy cornering, you lose traction on the inner wheel, and the car is very high. So several things can happen. The car can spin out on you, particularly with a rear engine car, as the Corvair was. All the weight is behind the wheels. You got the engine back there, so it's as if you're whipping the car around. So it could spin out on you, it could flip on you. Basically the thing could dig in and go over. That's pretty much bad enough. The handling was questionable.
From the explanation of the Corvair and its safety flaws, Unsafe at Any Speed became a bestseller, and thus influencing the general public to the point where GM Corvair sales dropped significantly over the next year. Being exposed about the truth of GM and Corvair, they went on to spy Nader in order to expose him and shut him up, hiring private investigators to find out about him and prostitutes in order to corner him into bad situations, like once at a grocery store. Nader, after doing some counter-spying and outwitting the private investigation specialists, he filed a lawsuit against GM for their spying, using his winnings from the lawsuit to do further research on automobile safety. After gaining popularity from the book, new independent and federal organizations formed, such as the National Highway Traffic Safety Association, or NHTSA. The NHTSA soon helped pass laws and regulations on automotive safety, imposing proper crash tests, safety inspections, and new regulations and laws that helped make drivers safer in their cars. Soon, vehicles were standardly equipped with airbags, seat belts, padded dashboards, reinforced steering columns, safety glass, smoother edges, and roll cages for racing vehicles. And from that, many lives were saved and injuries were prevented or lessened to a larger extent. From 1975 to 2004, about 195,382 lives were saved by seatbelts alone. The future of automobile safety still remains vague. However, Swedish auto manufacturer Volvo promises that no one should be harmed or killed in their next line of models coming in the second decade, Volvo being well known for its long line of safety innovations. The principles of Unsafe at Any Speed are still put in cars, laws, and roads since then, and is still continuing today. However, the idea that the injuries and deaths involved in car accidents are the driver's fault, or the nut behind the wheel, is becoming more and more prominent as cars are becoming safer themselves, and the drivers are becoming more dangerous, mainly from driving under the influence or texting while operating a motor vehicle. The pursuit for automobile safety still remains in laws and manufacturers, and will continue to do so to this day, and thus Unsafe at Any Speed was a turning point in automotive history.